Hi, I'm Karen Burthwright, and I played Shug Avery in The Color Purple at the Neptune Theatre, and then subsequently in a separate contract, a whole new contract, at RMTC and the Citadel, a co-pro. Shug before her time, Shug as a feminist, Shug as a woman of the world, Shug as a woman that was very different than the women that she grew up around in her small rural town in Georgia. Shug that pushed boundaries, Shug that escaped what the world told her that she had to do or what she could do in her world. Yeah, she was ahead of her time. I do believe that. I believe that as a modern woman at that time, in that day and age, as a mother, as a artist, as a singer, as a jazz singer who pursued her profession and abandoned family to make money and to provide for them, to escape the smallness and maybe in her view the single-mindedness of the mores and the morals of her environment at the time. She was more than what people were ready for and people saw. And the strength and the bravery in which she lived in her truth, as much as her surroundings and her time allowed her to, for in public life versus private life. And I respect a lot of that. You know, the fact that she was not defined in terms of straightness or parameters of what a woman could or was expected to be at the time in terms of having lovers that were both male and female or whoever she found herself attracted to. The fact that she wanted to be truthful and honest, the fact that she was independent and strong and refused to be limited, the fact that she wanted more and went and got it, the fact that she was hurt and complicated is very interesting to me. I find her fascinating. I find the most important thing about her is her seeing the beauty in others, specifically, obviously, most importantly in Seeley. But the fact that she pursued truth in herself, in her own life, in her own comings and goings, I think it gave her more validity with others because of what she did, her bravery, her courage at that time. You know, when she told you something or she shared something with you, it was so rich. It was sacred. It was beautiful. It was larger than life. You know, she traveled the world. She'd seen some things. You know, she wasn't limited, and I think that was. It was extremely feminist. It was extremely feminine. It was extremely brave and independent and truthful. All the things that every woman should be. She was vulnerable. You know, she was open. She was passionate. She was sexy, and she didn't hide any of that. And she wasn't ashamed of any of it. That she wanted to pursue a career, and that she was hurt by Mr. and that relationship didn't work out, and kind of, you know, catapulted her into a different direction, and she wasn't afraid of her artistry and her voice and jazz music and secular music. As a daughter of a pastor, growing up in the church, using her gifts for more, you know, to enrich others, to share, to be more than maybe they thought it was supposed to be as a preacher's kid, you know, as a preacher's child. So taking that root of spirituality and her upbringing and making it her own. Yeah, I 100% believe that she was ahead of her time and that she was a trailblazer and 100% a feminist, and a black feminist at that. Yes, go Shug. You know, I learned a lot from her, and I reconciled a lot of things as a result of having played her and getting in underneath the crooks and crevices and crannies of her being and exploring my womanness against hers in tandem. So yeah, she's everything. yeah, I love her being, if that offshoot from Celie being the center and her being one of the offshoots with Sophia on either side of Celie. I love that Shug was there to do that and be that for her, and that she welcomed that Celie allowed that side of her to come out and be recognized because of her honesty and her fearlessness and her owning her own body and her own skin. Like, how difficult would that have been at that time? Apparently she didn't think it was difficult enough to not do it. So thank you, Shug. Absolutely. 100%. She's fascinating. And flawed and fabulous. And frisky, ferocious. Who doesn't like a little bit of alliteration? Yeah, she's definitely ahead of her time. And definitely she's a force. And yeah, worthy of the gossip and the murmurings of the church ladies in the town and everyone she grew up with. 100%. Let them talk. They wouldn't have anything to talk about if it wasn't for Shug. Because she was living a life that they wasn't something that was normal and that they were used to and that they knew anything about. So of course they had to talk about it because there's a mystery and a wonderment around her, and a distance that she created as well from her place of birth. She went elsewhere. She branched out, and she was unapologetically herself. So yeah, it was. Those are things I think that mean that she was definitely ahead of her time and a trailblazer. And 100% yes, feminist, absolutely. So, yes, so playing Shug in Halifax at Neptune, ending that contract, closing that show, and then having a break before starting up the new contract with the co-production at the Citadel and then on to RMTC. That first break in between Halifax and Edmonton, it was very difficult to not be Shug Avery anymore. Art, of course, imitates life, and art's purpose is to mimic and mirror and highlight life, as Nina Simone so eloquently put it. And when your art requires so much of your likeness and your being, and in my case, for the first time ever in my career as an actor, singer, dancer, I have never been afforded the opportunity to pool so much of myself, my true self, and everything in my wheelhouse to create my version of Shug. There was so much of me invested in that, and so much reverence for what I had to do to create her, that it was very jarring to not be her for a little bit of time, especially knowing that I was about to be her again, if that makes any sense. It was also hard on the body and the voice to not be regular and have that routine as much anymore. It was shocking. It was very emotional. It's almost like the artistic version of being dizzy or disoriented and not being able to get your bearings. Like, your bearings weren't right without her and without the show, with that music feeding you and nourishing you 8 times a week in the way that it did. There's a healing. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of come to Jesus moments. There's a lot of energy and emotion and sexuality and love and newness and experience and relationships, and a lot happens. You go through the trajectory and the arc of a life and someone's life force over, the span of decades in this show. Like 30 years, it's a long time, or so, or a little bit more. And it's the separation was difficult because I love what I do, and I specifically and particularly and especially loved doing this particular show, playing this particular role, being exposed to and enriched by this material. For those familiar with the show and who've seen it, and for those that are not, Shug Avery has a very delayed entrance into the show. I have about the first 30 minutes almost until I enter. And for me personally, what I found helpful, I watch the show every day up until the point where I need to go and get myself, focused and in character and into costume and have my time for myself in my change room. But I watch the majority up until that point that I had to go get ready. I watched the show. In Halifax, I sung backup vocals for the majority of that time until I had to become Shug Avery. So backstage left, that was my nook, that was my spot. And to receive the energy and to be a part of what was going on prior to me arriving as an actor and as a person, as Karen Burthwright and as Shug, was very important to me, specifically for this show. Because I wanted to get the energy of the audience, the temperature of the type of show we were about to do that night, the story, the storyline, the truth of what was happening on stage. I needed to be a part of that leading up. So watching that much of the show before becoming a part of it, there's a lot of the show in me as well, because there's a lot of literally visual and taking it in and singing and giving my part in Halifax. I was just observing and singing for myself in the second contract. That wasn't required of me particularly, but I still did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. And those images and hearing what people said about me from an actor's point of view was very important for me as well, because Shug is spoken of quite frequently. I cannot remember the amount of times my name is said, not just for the whole show, but before you even meet me. It's extraordinary, just the all those tidbits. And I needed to, and I felt better about my performance hearing all of that stuff and being inundated with it and having it there, because she would have known a lot of that stuff before she would have left and blah, blah, blah. So all of those images, and then I get to release it by doing the show. So having closed the Halifax production, having all this imagery, both visual and participatory, in me, and then having nowhere for it to go, was very bizarre for me. And more importantly, not being able to see the amazing people that I get to play with and work with every day. Like, you become a family. You really become connected and joined to these people, these talents, these energies, these faces, and the schedule and the structure of it all. And it was hard, and it was very emotional, it was very difficult. It was very bizarre to not be doing it, to not be a part of that which we bonded and created and birthed together. So it was very difficult to step away and remove. Of course, it's wonderful to give the body and the soul and the mind and the voice a rest, but also what I worried about, because it is such an undertaking, it's such a big sing and an involved, emotional ride, that you build up the musculature to help you get through that, and to get through it easy. You get to know how and where and why. And I was a bit trepidatious about moving away from that and not having that for a bit, because it requires so much of you and so much, all that you learned to handle it, body, mind, spirit, soul, and energy. To move away from that as Shug was very bizarre for me and a bit scary. But of course, getting rest and changing, just having a break is great, but I just missed it. Straight goods, I just missed doing it. I hated being away from Tara. I hated not being Shug to her Sealy, not hearing all those beautiful harmonies from the church ladies, the storytelling that was happening, the acting that was going on from Ryan Allen and from Andrew Broderick, and, it just, moments with people backstage, I missed it all. To see the beauty and the womanness and the blackness and the guidance and the stewardship that both Sophia, Janelle Cooper, and I provided to, for, and with Sealy, and also for ourselves. What we as Black women in these roles overcame and had to be subjected to. It made me stronger, it made me better. And I guess as an artist, I didn't want to remove myself from anything that was able to make me better and keep me in that mold. But you know what? It is what it is. We're just discussing the whats and whys. Obviously, I survived and, jumped right back in both feet, both arms, dove right back in. But yeah, the break was difficult and weird, and it was lovely, yes, to take a break from the material, from the heaviness of it, from the emotional arc of what you have to produce, but it was very sad to close that show and to walk away, and knowing that there weren't going to be the same people that you just worked with. You were saying goodbye to that version of the show in the case of those of us that were that auditioned for and were able to move on to the new contract. So it was a lot. It was a lot, and it was monumentous, and it was huge. And again, I welcome it because it made me grow. I learned a ton and a bunch, and figured out real quick how to rest my body and recuperate and do things and remember and celebrate and honor what we did create, and knowing, every now and then pick up that script and make sure you remember your lines, you know what I mean? So there was that too. There was work to be done in the break as well. But it was weird being without Shug, like just not having her, for a bit. I missed her. And I was curious about myself without her, if that makes any sense, especially knowing that I was going to continue on. So yeah, that's my story and my feelings. Those are my feelings on the separation at the end of a contract, and then having a break, and then moving on to doing that same show in a new contract. And lastly, what was it like working with the incomparable Kimberley Rampersad? The poise, the grace, the presence, the bar that was set by her, the tone, the blexcellence, the guidance, the skilled, prepared guidance that she provides in a room. The room that she creates, it's rife with respect, with gratitude, with knowing that you are required to do all the work, all the hard work, all the heavy lifting. There was no room for I can't. There was room for we'll discover and figure it out together, and we're going to get there regardless of what it costs, because we have to. We don't have a choice. So seeing Kimberley and being led by her, having a Black female director of West Indian descent, a Canadian, it checked all the boxes I've ever needed it to check. As someone that has been a token, has been one of two or three or a handful, some casts have half a Black cast or half a cast of color, of people of color, or being a token, what have you. When I'm teaching, when I'm leading workshops, when I'm auditioning, when I'm in a show in any of the capacities I mentioned before, in terms of cast breakdowns, in terms of racial and sexual, between the sexes, all genders, all orientations, I don't get to see myself. In Kimberley, I saw myself, and some of the most important and greatest and most powerful and most beautiful parts of myself with her at the helm of the room. So anytime that I walk into the room and look like what she's doing for me now, I need to remember that and see that. And she gave me the opportunity to see that and to be aware of that. That's what it looks like. I don't get to see that and know that in my career, in my life, as much as I should. And with her, I did. She was so well prepared. She armed us with the tools that we needed. The people that she surrounded herself with to create both of these rooms of excellence and requirements and of learning and of nurturing and of growing and of just, kneading us into the dough that we needed to become to grow and to blossom. It was quite impressive. I was very grateful that she was available and she was chosen for this, because she was meant for it. She's meant for a lot of other things as well, but specifically not just because it's a Black story, but the attention to detail that I believe this type of intelligent and poised and prepared and fearless and respectful Black woman did tackle. It was kismet. It was meant to be. It was ordained. It was ordered by the ancestors, and I am so grateful. The amount of learning and what she pulled out of me, what she required of me, and what she made me pull out of myself. You know what I mean? Like, the director can't do all the work. You have to show up. She chose wonderful, strong, present, hard-working actors. And, you know, every theater, every contract is different in terms of how much pull and how much power you have to create and to cast and to have who you want there, whatever all the things that happen behind closed doors that we don't know about. I'm just grateful that she was there, and I was grateful that I was able to be a part of that. So on my journey as an actor, that she helped shape and guide this particular version of who I was supposed to become as an artist. I'm very grateful. She was extraordinary, and it wasn't easy. It's not an easy show. It's very difficult because of what it means. It means so much. There was no opportunity, and there was no way we could have got it wrong. That was not in the cards. It wasn't an option, and I never felt like that option was there. And I felt that she was so prepared and rehearsed and researched about the material, and surrounded us with resources in terms of associate directors and dramaturgy for the beautiful version of the story that we created and erected together. So I'm very grateful for her. I'm grateful for her talents. I'm grateful for her vision. I'm grateful for how she led and for what she learned on this journey. No, obviously no one's perfect. None of us were, you know, and she knows that she isn't as well. She's human, but she showed up as a human being, very giving and very open, very accessible, and I respect the requirements that she set. And I respect the tone that she etched into every fiber of that room. And I respect the blood, sweat, and tears that she put into the creation of the inaugural Canadian regional production of The Color Purple, and the second creation and iteration of The Color Purple as a company in Canada. I'm very much so indebted to her. And as I said before, yes, I was able to watch, you know, almost the first 30 minutes of the show every day for, you know, how many of her 100 of shows or whatever, plus that I was gifted and blessed enough to do. And my only regret is I didn't get to see the whole thing, because you can't be in it and see it at the same time. And of course, I'd much rather be a part of it now, knowing what that means. Of course, when I saw it, you know, you don't dream of being in The Color Purple. You're just like, wow, that show. You know, of course, yes, you want to be in it, but you're just in awe of it as it's happening to you, as it's being thrust upon you. But being in it, woo! That is a whole other something, a whole lot of something else, and it's a blessing in truth. And me happy, you say me glad for do it. So I'm very grateful to her, and to all the powers that be, and all the, you know, whatever stones aligned and stars aligned to allow for me to be a part of this show in the way that I was, under both contracts. I'm very grateful. And I thank her. Most importantly, I thank her for what she did, for what she created, and for the career that she's etching out for herself as a director and as an associate artistic director, that she was brave enough to know where she belonged and belongs. Not that it has to be rigid and stay the same, but all the iterations and all the slashes that she's adding behind her name. I am very grateful, because I learned a whole lot. And I wouldn't have learned that if I wasn't in that room in that way. And whatever would have taken the place of it was not going to be that, and it wouldn't have been as special. And I know that, and I'm grateful for that. So working with Kim was wonderful. We are what we are, and we were born the way we are for a reason. And I'm so glad that she pursued what she was supposed to pursue and showed up for us every day. And I hope that she learned as much from us as we did from her. I hope that we gave to the room all that she hoped and dreamed that we would have. And I hope that every time she saw the show, that she was overwhelmed and blown away by what she helped birth. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you. Mwah. Thanks for having me, Musical Tokens.
Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and visit our website, musicaltokens.com, for your daily dose of